whole new global talk show, Newstellers. Let's meet our panelists. Media interest outside of Korea has increased amid the Lotte family feud over the control of their huge corporation. Many foreign media, including Forbes and the 월스트리트저널, reported that the fight between the chairman of Lotte Group, Shin Dong-bin, and his elder brother, Shin Dong-ju, is the latest succession battle in one of the largest retailers in Asia and exemplifies the pitfalls of Korea's family-run conglomerates. The power struggle eventually ended with Shin Dong-bin taking control. So we've been seeing this family feud all over the Korean media, but how is it viewed by the foreign media?
I think media in general likes a good dispute and conflict, and this story certainly has lots of conflict, so that's naturally going to excite media. I also think that there's a really sort of interesting, almost Shakespearean quality to this story, where you have two brothers fighting over the control of this company, and one of them even sort of dethrones his father. And this, I saw one foreign correspondent sort of describe it as corporate patricide, which is a nice turn of phrase. And then as well as that, I think the other element of this that is interesting to foreign media is just how it illustrates how family controlled the Korean economy is. You have a small number of families basically dominating the entire economic system, which is something that I think is very interesting to outsiders.
Yeah,
Indeed.
exactly. I think the Western media or foreign media use this story to explain once again the peculiarity of the Korean economic system. Something else that I found, I think the foreign media was interested in is the fact that it turned out that during this struggle, it became very important for the Korean public opinion to know whether Lotte was Japanese or Korean. There was a nationalistic aspect to it. That was kind of interesting. That says a lot of things about the country as well.
I think that's an example of how Korean society, which is very nationalistic, takes companies as their own, as part of their own country and values. They take Lotte or Samsung as part of their heritage and part of their national pride. So yeah, in this case, there were a lot of public criticism about the Japanese roots of this company, Lotte.
Well, I think another thing it draws attention to is how the Korean economy is still so reliant on these companies. Like these companies that drove, what's called South Korea's economic miracle are still like far and away the biggest companies that, despite all of the development that's taken place in Korean society, sort of second tier, like a second crop of like new and innovative companies have not come along to challenge Chaebol or to take a part of the pie. I think that's another interesting aspect of this.
Okay. Well, we'll be getting more into this meaty topic. We'll be talking about family-run conglomerates among the various international corporations across the globe. Our title today is Family Conglomerates Prevailing in the World. So there are a lot of big brands these days that are popular internationally. So let's take a look at this list to see who they are. Family-run corporations occupy a large number of the most powerful conglomerates around the world. Looking at the rankings of the world's 500 largest companies published by Fortune this year, 37% of them are family-owned, including Walmart in first place, as well as Volkswagen and Ford. So the Korean brand Samsung is also on that list at 13th. But which country did you see most of in the list? Which has the most entries in the rankings, and what kind of industries are they in?
Well, I think unsurprisingly, because the United States is still the world's largest economy, it obviously has a very large amount of big companies. Some obvious examples are Walmart in retail, General Electric in transportation, electronics, healthcare, the list goes on and on, Boeing in aviation. And these companies affect people all around the world. They're huge entities with massive profits and massive influence. And some of them is in America as well, such as Walmart, are family controlled to this day.
Something I would like to add is if you take the 100 biggest economies, if you mix companies and countries, it turns out that 36 are companies. You have corporate entities such as Shell, Walmart, ExxonMobil, that actually their revenue are bigger than the GDP of countries such as Venezuela, South Africa, or Austria. And if these companies are family run, it shows how incredibly powerful and rich some families are.
Amazing. So you have companies that are bigger than some countries.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
1/3 actually, if you take the 100 biggest economies.
Amazing stuff. So huge family-run conglomerates all over the world, very, very successful. What do you think their secret is? What's the secret to lasting as long as they have?
I don't know if there's a particular secret that we can attribute to family control. If you look at the Fortune 500, there's a fairly even split between public companies and family-controlled companies. So we can see examples of very successful companies in either case. So there is a lot of debate about how family control affects the economic performance of a company, and there are some sort of alleged benefits, but I'm not sure that there's sort of a secret sauce that makes family control so much more preferable than any other type of company.
They do have, like, having a family business does have some comparative advantages. I was reading this KPMG, this consulting company, studies about family businesses, and they were explaining that if you keep company in the family, then your managers, if they are your family members, are more loyal. They are more committed to the long-term success of the company. And if it's a company that was built by your father, your grandfather, then you are more attached to some values. You're not here to make a quick buck, sell it, and move on. And this is you see what happened in some company. If you're a CEO who arrive, they have a huge paycheck, they sell the company and they go. And I think the fact that it's in the family, you can make sometimes more like short-term sacrifice for long-term benefits.
I agree. I think that like having a family-owned structure like creates a sustainable and a natural way of keeping the company going for a long time. That like as Fred alluded to, when somebody comes into this company, there's this idea of like you're stepping into this tradition that's rooted in something that's very real. Like family is something that resonates with all of us.
Actually, there's a recent study that make people realize that the family business, they are more resilient in crisis times.
Right.
For example, they don't perform that good in good times. They have that long-term view of 10, 20 years, the next generation. So they prepare much better. They don't take those many risks, but are much more prepared. They save more money. They have less capital expenditure. So in the crisis times, they can do better and they can keep more or less their wealth without falling down as their competitors.
Okay, so the majority of our panel thinks that the long-term orientation of these family-run conglomerates gives them a bit of an edge over perhaps more capitalist or...
Well, I'm happy to be a contrarian. I'm not sure I agree with that. But I mean, I think any of the benefits you can look to can probably be sort of offset by, or comparable problems.
Okay.
I think like anything else, it's a kind of double-edged sword.
Yeah.
There are benefits that go along with it, but there are risks.
Indeed.
that
Yeah,
we-
exactly.
So we've been talking about family-run conglomerates, and we talked about the Lotte feud in the opening. But why don't we talk about other examples of succession battles or family feuds over inheritance? They sometimes plaster the economic news as well as the tabloids sometimes. What can you think of?
Well, in France, we all know L'Oréal, the biggest cosmetic company in the world. And the heiress of L'Oréal, Liliane Bettencourt, who is over 90 now, she's the wealthiest woman in France. She has, I think, assets worth like 18 billion euros. She's really rich. And there was this huge battle with her daughter, who was blaming her mother because she was thinking the mother was giving too much money to France. There was some kind of scandals involving politicians. She said her mother had dementia and she was not responsible enough. So this is how she managed to get hold of the inheritance and the mother asset. But this struggle, it was a legal battle that went on, that raged for years. But interestingly enough, like this battle did not affect L'Oréal because the mother and daughter have no managing position at all.
Okay.
They're just shareholders, like majority shareholder of the company.
Right.
But this did not affect L'Oréal is still a thriving company, and this inheritance issue did not affect the company.
Okay.
Here in Korea, quite recently, there was a big feud in Samsung between Lee Kong-hee and his older brother, who actually recently died. Lee Meng-hee. And his elder brother basically was seeking about $800 million of his younger brother's considerable fortune. And this raged on for quite a few years. They were duking it out in the courts until basically last year, the elder brother decided not to appeal a court decision to sort of reject his petition. But that was something that was a big here and abroad.
Well, in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu, there's a company called Chettinad, which was founded by this tycoon who had this uncanny ability to pick the winning racehorse. And he made a lot of money, and he was advancing in age. He was in his 80s, and he had no children, so he designated this young man as his heir. And then, because he said that he felt like this young man was like divinely sent, like chosen by God. And so this young guy moved in with him and started like organizing a coup, and like the old guy accused him of like hired thugs to come to his house and violently threaten him. And yeah, then of course, you know, the tycoon wanted to like change his decision and tell this guy that he couldn't have the empire, but then it was a really terrible case. So maybe that's an example of how you should choose an heir not because you feel like God has ordered it, maybe because they have credentials or because they have some kind of plan or like, you know, some kind of vision for your business.
Yeah, there are other tycoons that they are conscious about it, and they try to take a lot of care and do it like slowly. For example, the Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim, who is the second richest man in the world. He controls Grupo Carso, it's a really big conglomerate. So he's giving step by step the assets of his different companies to his 6 sons and daughters. He's a very family man. He values a lot to be the family together. And for the moment, he's 73 years old. It looks like there's no power struggle there because he's managing that thing good, you know.
Okay, so there are ways to manage the company so that there's no family feuds. There's so much drama, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's very Shakespearean, as John said earlier.
When huge sums of money are involved, there's always
No such thing as family, apparently.
I don't know. There's got to be some cliche like blood and money don't mix or something. I don't know. It's not coming to mind.
Blood is thicker than water, but money is kind of more important than both of them, I guess, in the end.
It's good stories for good story materials for
It
journalists.
is. It's probably why we see it splashed all over the tabloids as well. All right, so unlike the founders who sometimes make complete empires out of almost nothing, as well as the second generation who grow up watching their parents struggle, the third generation chaebols, on the other hand, they grow up with very privileged lives and sometimes they take this for granted. And there's a recently released movie about a third generation chaebol that's doing it pretty well these days. So let's take a look at the screen.
조태우 사회는 경찰이 건드릴 목표가 없어요. 무슨 일 생기면 어떻게 되는지 알지? 신경 쓰지 마.
So the Korean movie Veteran, it depicts this arrogant and cruel son of a wealthy family played by Yoo Ha-in in a very sleazy manner. I love it. But in reality, there are second and third generations of these very wealthy families who are always followed by the media, capturing their outrageous behavior sometimes. Can you think of any examples?
That happens in all the world, I think, not only in Korea. For example, in Romania, is that there is this son of a big tycoon of Romania, but he used to go to the high school by helicopter because he was late. And recently he was on the media because he went with his Ferrari to take the final exam of the high school to graduate, but he was cheating and he was kicked out of the class. So it kind of showed that even if he had a lot of money and he was like so powerful, he could not go over the law.
I can mention as well in France, there is a Lagardère example. Arnaud Lagardère inherited a huge group. They're in many different sectors, media, weapons. And Arnaud Lagardère inherited the company from his father. His behavior was not outrageous, but people made fun of him because he was in a relationship with his very young Belgian model. And they accepted some very disturbing interview where they were like disclosing a lot of their intimate moments. And the video was ridiculous, and people were really make fun of them. And actually, the shareholder of the company were very unhappy with the image he was giving of his company.
I think here in Korea, it's not just the third generation that attracts sort of antipathy. It's also the second generation, particularly because they're the ones that are still very much in power. So if you look at the top 10 chaebol, a majority of those chairmen have been convicted of crimes at one point or another. And then when it comes to the third generation, they're sort of very much untested, and there's a big questions over you know, are these people qualified? Are they going to do a good job? We don't really know much about them. I wrote a profile recently about the upcoming Samsung successor, Lee Jae-young, and there's, you know, most of the people I talked to were sort of ambivalent about whether he will really have the chops to take this company to the next level. Samsung obviously is massively successful, but they've also lost market share in recent months and years in their smartphone business. And so their future isn't necessarily that secure, and people are really hoping that there's going to be someone who's competent taking over. And for now, we're just going to have to wait and see if that's going to happen.
We talked about family-run conglomerates and the problems of their successions. So the succession of corporate management is an important matter for any company, whether family-run or not. And I've got a really good example of a company that prevented any sort of dilemma over its succession. So let's take a look. The founder of Apple, Steve Jobs, had in mind a list of possible candidates to be the next successor pretty early on, including Bertrand Serlet, Jonathan Ive, and Tim Cook. He re-evaluated the candidates after he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2009, finally handing over control to Tim Cook, who took charge of Apple after Jobs passed away in 2011. So Apple is certainly not family run, but it seems to be a very good example of choosing a company successor. Can you think of any other examples where the process was well managed and handled?
I can mention the Michelin example in France. You probably know Michelin. Now it's the second biggest tire manufacturer in the world. And actually, the person who made this company so big was the third generation successor, François Michelin, who actually died this April. It's pretty recent.
Okay.
And he was really groomed from the very early age by his father, and he started at the bottom of the company. He started within a factory, and then he climbed up the ladder. And he really is the one because he had a strong focus on innovation. He was really good in terms of a social policy, employee policy, and he really made Michelin this huge company. And interestingly enough, he did the same thing with his own son, Édouard Michelin, who was an engineer who as well started at the bottom of the company. And when Édouard Michelin was head of the company continued to grow. And unfortunately, the process was disrupted because the son, Édouard Michelin, died of an accident when he was 46.
Oh no.
So now Michelin is run by somebody that is not related to the Michelin family. But it's not because they didn't plan the succession, it's because the son died in unexpected circumstances.
Okay, but an effective procedure
Yeah,
while it was in
exactly.
place.
That was very effective.
Any other examples?
One is Miele, which is a German company who are best known for home appliances. They've been going for 4 generations, which is quite a long time and quite impressive, since 1899. So it's a long stretch where a company's been kept in one family, and much longer than anything in this country. And by most accounts, they're quite successful and well regarded. So they seem to have done a very good job in that regard, in keeping it in the family and still maintaining, you know, a successful business.
In terms of successful successions, there was an interesting article on the Family Business Institute that argued that an important thing is to separate the roles of owner and manager.
Right.
So if you maintain the family ownership, you can maintain all of the good things that we've been talking about a family-owned business, of the continuing the legacy. But you can have somebody who's a very skilled manager who's employed to actually make the decisions that affect how the company is run. So that might be a useful model for family-owned businesses to follow in terms of keeping the business performance going along well, but also maintaining the family-owned structure and the good things that come along with that.
Okay, so powerful conglomerates that we've been talking about, they're in very prominent positions. So social responsibility comes to mind as well. Do you think that's a prerequisite to be a well-regarded, successful company these days?
Actually, I read a recent study that said that the corporate social responsibility, CSR, is much more important than people think. People are supposed to buy the products because you like some product because of features of the product. But that study said, for people it was more important the image in general of the company than the product itself. And that's where the corporate social responsibility comes. Because when a company builds that corporate social responsibility, they are building their image. So that image is going to be better for the customers, and the customers are going to buy their product. So that's why a lot of companies are working hard in developing that corporate social responsibility, which is better for the companies and for the countries and for the people.
Yeah, CSR is really the buzzword these days, but many companies do not understand what it really is. I mean, we see too many companies just like they put their employees some company color cap and they go give like cold bricks to old people in some poor neighborhood. And, oh, that's CSR. No, it's not. Giving coal to poor people is not. This is just some very poor image PR operation. What is CSR is you have to companies need to have an understanding that the society they cannot be separated for the society where they're in. So that's why it's important, of course, for their image, but as well for their own operation. It's important to treat well their employees. It's important to respect some basic rules such as not employing children. And I like the example of Ford, who had this amazing idea at the time, like to pay enough his workers so they can buy his own cars. And this is something that people forget now. It's important to pay well your own employee. Like CSR is not PR, but few companies still understand it.
Yeah, I agree with Fred. I mean, I think instead of making charitable donations, all of the evidence shows that what's better for society is to pay people well and to give them stable jobs and to give them health care benefits and all of that. I mean, Walmart is a great example. Walmart donates a lot of money to charity, presumably because they want to burnish an image of themselves as like a morally responsible and a philanthropic kind of company. But there's a reason that they don't allow unions. There's a reason that they don't pay people well, because that would cut into their profits a whole lot more. So I think to be truly responsible, treat people that are working for you well, and that's real corporate responsibility.
I do think the image that a company can develop through its charitable work and also its business conditions does matter to consumers to a degree, but I also think the threshold is quite high. I think it's quite hard, actually, when push comes to shove. I think it's quite hard to convince a consumer to not spend their money or to spend their money in a certain direction just because of their charity or lack of charity. I actually think that doesn't influence consumers maybe as much as we'd like to think. I think we'd like to think that we're sort of these very morally concerned people who are always thinking about every cent we spend, but I think in reality most people are more concerned about paying the bills and the rent and so on. And you see some very wealthy, prominent people give a lot of their fortune to charity. A good example is Bill Gates, who's given a phenomenal amount of money to different projects around the world. He's spent a lot of money in Africa fighting very destructive diseases there and conditions. And I think the super rich always sort of have to contend with this sort of a negative image just because they're so wealthy and just because they have so much power, and I think they're always going to have that sort of stigma to some degree. But I think for someone in that sort of upper echelon, Bill Gates is quite well regarded and well liked, certainly compared to other wealthy people I can think of, and I think that's one example of someone who seems to be a relatively moral person as far as I can tell.
Okay. So as we become richer, you know, we do start to look at more of the CSR aspects of companies as well, but it also highlights the economic inequality as well. But I think the main point I got from this was that charity should start at home or within the company. So we've been talking about power struggles, the issue of succession. To outsiders, it might just seem like a matter of family affairs, but who gets to be the heir of a company does or could affect the entire economy as well, because there's a risk of privatization of profits and socialization of losses. So something to keep in mind. Shall we wrap up with our final headlines as usual? Is anyone ready?
I can go first.
Okay, Stephen.
I'll say keep it in the family as long as you're doing well.
Okay. Good summary.
My headline would be Challenges of Family-Run Businesses in the 21st Century.
I would say family business, good profits with a dark side.
Oh.
I would say family or not, good stewardship is the most important thing.
Okay. Some concise headlines to really effectively summarize our topic today. Thank you guys for joining me. Hope you enjoyed today's topic.
Thank you.
Very interesting indeed. I'll see you all next week. And join us next week, viewers, for a whole new global talk show, Newstellers. We will be open for any opinions or requests on our official website as well as our Facebook page.
Walmart is able to undercut them by selling a lot more products in one place and selling those products at a lot cheaper. They pay their employees very, very low wages.
In France, we have the Mullier families. Most of the managing positions are held with the family. They don't want to have the shareholder system.
They get into a lot of trouble for their outrageous behaviour.
Conrad Hilton, who was accused of assaulting a flight attendant. When people see people of very privileged background treat people poorly or break the law flagrantly, they get very annoyed by that.